Dave, how did you get involved with Own Your Labs?
Actually, that's a fun story. I mentioned how I was obsessively testing at the very beginning of my journey. And in the course of doing it, I was spending a lot of money. It was like $100 for every advanced lipid test and NMR. And I was getting them just one at a time. But I wanted the other metrics as well. I wanted a CMP, and I wanted fasting insulin, and all these things. And then I got fortunate that I met a doctor, Jonathan Edwards, who at the time was in Las Vegas. And he said I could just go ahead and have him order the test. I would just pay him directly. And at that point, I was like, great. How much could you get an NMR for at the time? And I think at the time he could get it for like 60. I was like, oh, this is great. What about fasting insulin? And he kept giving me these numbers, and I was like, this is so fantastic. I'm going to get more and more of these tests. And as I'm reporting it online in my blog, naturally more and more people were like,
I want it too.
I want to be able to get tests. Can you hook a guy up? I need to catch this and that. And I kept saying, no, try to work with your doctor, et cetera. But eventually, I saw that there were these, the same way I was getting my tests were these online resellers. And so you'd see like a requested test or Ulta Labs. And I went, why can't we do that? Why can't we actually start up our own platform where people could order like they do, except at the end at checkout, we incentivize them to do what we're doing, which is to share their data. So we have this option, this checkbox for a citizen science discount. You can get 10% off of your order if you agree to provide your anonymized data. We anonymize it. We take name, birth date, contact information, everything out. And then you answer a few more questions on demographics. And then that way we could finally meet more of my dream, which is to have more open data and more open science. One of my big complaints, not to get on a soapbox, is that we have all of this great data that's getting collected by these teams, that's getting paid for by these companies, and then they're proprietary. Mm-hmm. And so our ability to do things like run analyses on low carbers, just populations of low carbers, is so limited because there's not an open data set out there. And so I couldn't help but appreciate that, hey, if a lot of people who follow my work are already low carbers and they're coming to this platform to get their blood work, and we can provide that incentive, you don't have to, it's an opt-in, that could be a way that we could build this data set. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we don't yet have it available. We have to actually go through some legal hurdles because ironically, in spite of the fact that we make it explicit, in spite of the fact that people opt in for it, there's still some unknowns with HIPAA that we're trying to work through the lawyers on to be sure that it meets all the compliance of all of the regulatory morass. It's unfortunate because I feel like everybody is like we are. They're citizen scientists who would not mind at all, especially if they agreed to all of the stipulations to advance science. But that's the reality of it. So we have to be careful.